welcome back. Right now with us today, I have Adrian Allotey. Did I say that right?
It's Allotey. My husband's from
Allotey.
Ghana, West Africa, so it's kind of French.
I love that. I'm so glad I asked.
Yeah.
Adrian Allotey, right? Cool. All right.
Yes.
So, um, Adrian is an end-of-life doula, and so she is tells me that she's currently living her best life as a result of responding to a universal calling. And I think that is so important that if we can all, that's how we all really live our best lives. So what she's doing right now is to be in service to elders and their loved ones. Her mission is to promote the final years as a sacred, beautiful, honorable stage of life. Thank you. Serving this world as a non-medical end-of-life doula and elder companion who specializes in physical, emotional, and spiritual care, which are all so important. That's everything. Through extensive and continuous end-of-life doula training, she has been able to provide support, education, and suggestions for comfort of those with a terminal diagnosis. And she is equipped with the skills to prepare those who have the diagnosis and their loved ones for their last breath, hold their hand through a peaceful transition, and create a new normal for those left behind. Adrian's own self-care regime, personal growth, and intuition allow her to mindfully hold space and provide comfort for aging people and their families in a non-judgmental and loving manner. She improves the quality of her clients' lives by being an active listener, understanding them, and advocating for their wishes, recognizing and supporting the notion that social interaction can be the greatest need. She is also able to find creative ways to keep her clients engaged. Interesting. I want to hear more about that. So her motto, "My heart to your heart," is evident in the holistic companionship that she provides. She also has a toolkit of resources to bring maximum comfort, like Reiki, essential oils, crystals, etc., which I also want to hear more about. And I love this. She's often referred to as an angel, a godsend, an extraordinary, beyond belief, and words such as these. So thank you for taking your time and being here today. It is truly, truly an honor to have you with us.
Well, thank you as well. I appreciate you being a part of getting this message out that there is non-medical assistance available at the end of life. And so, as you have shared, my focus really is not only with my clients, but with myself as well, quality of life. You cannot preach to others what you don't live. And so I wholeheartedly believe that each moment from birth to death is equally valuable. I commit to that for my clients, and I also commit to it for myself. You know, society cherishes and celebrates the beginning years of life in so many ways. There's so many messages out there. There are even birth doulas. But what do we know? What messages do we receive, believe, or even send about the end of life? I had to do something about that. So I established my company, You Are Not Alone Elder Care, like you said, to improve the quality of life for seniors and their loved ones. I empower my clients to find meaning. That's very important. You are not the illness. What their contribution to life was and still are. It's a life cycle. And so doing this work, I have found that as people grow older and older, they tend to move slowly and slowly further away from the core of who they are and what they love to do. And what I know for sure, Leanne, is that we all have a core. Our core is greater than our roles, bigger than the jobs that we hold, our titles. And so my path to this amazing work began as a volunteer at 2 local hospices. And when I work at the local hospice, I realized, you know what? These people's lives are coming to an end. And so is mine. And so at the time, I was working a full-time job, a very well-paid full-time job with excellent benefits. Society would have told me that that is the place for you. But it just didn't bring out the best of me. And I began to really dislike myself for getting up and going there every day. Every day I would ask myself, Adrian, are you willing to risk it all to gain yourself? And one day I answered yes. And I walked away from it. Put into the test 2 Bible scriptures. One, having the faith the size of a mustard seed. And 2, the Bible verse that talks about cattle on 1,000 hills. Now, if there are cattle on 1,000 hills, I have a right to that. I'm entitled to it, to feed myself and to feed my family. All with that same faith the size of a mustard seed. Right. Now, I am not recommending people to walk away from their jobs unless you have a plan. But for me, Leanne, I have to say that was my plan. That was it. I was purpose to walk away.
Yeah. Well, I think when we make those choices and sometimes walk away from those things that seem like it's everything that we want, the money, the job and everything, only to then to discover ourselves and our true purpose and enhance our quality of life and really step into what we are meant to do and why we are here, I think is huge, is absolutely huge.
I knew that there was a calling on my life to serve those at the end of life. The universe spoke it to me over and over. And so I went from being jobless to being a servant at such a sacred place in people's lives. I did the work though. Yeah. There's work involved. I took one step at a time. I continually trained myself in the various end of life stages so I can provide that understanding to people that death is a natural process. It's not a medical one, a human one, a spiritual one, if that is what your beliefs will take you. And so I bring comfort, education, and support to the families that I work with. Right. I help families at a time when most people don't know what to say or do. People have a tendency of not showing up. And so I empower them with the skills to show up, to be their authentic selves so that they feel less guilt, so that the person who is passing feels less of a burden. And to be honest with you, I got to continue to do that work because in order for me to expect for them to be authentic, I got to be authentic too.
Absolutely. So I want to back up just a little bit because you said that you think that, or you've seen that as people come towards correct me if I'm wrong, as people come towards the end of their life, they begin to lose sight of their purpose.
I'm going to take it a step further. As we age, we start adopting these roles of college student, getting married, having children. We adopt those roles, and all of a sudden we forget. And by the time we get to be a grandparent, forget it. It's all about the grandchildren, right? So we love that stuff, but it's not at the core of who we are.
Interesting. Because I kind of thought that as we got older, we got wiser and we knew who we were and we were able to develop that self-awareness and things. But I think you're right that so much of the time we really we get caught up in our jobs and our families and we do lose sight of who we are.
Yeah. And some people do the work. Leanne, and some people do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more conscious in who they are and tapping into that core. Mm-hmm. And
so
maybe the ones that are, that don't need as much companionship or because they're out there doing their thing. But a lot of times, when you start losing the ability to move about or move as freely, that also will. So you may have the memory of who you are, but you may not be able to perform the activities that you used to do.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I see that for sure. So then it's really important. You said that, each moment of life is equally valuable from the time you were born onward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The moments we have now, just as valuable as the ones when I go and have dinner later or when I work with a client. And so that's how I purposely decide to show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as an end-of-life doula, that's one of the things that I really focus on with my clients is, showing up without any judgment, without any preconceived notions, without any expectations, without being attached to the outcome,
Mm.
and really diving into the moment. And so I believe that the moment really will tell you what your heart's desires are, what your needs are in that moment. And it's kind of cliche as people use those words like mindfully, but really the power of the moment is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to stress too that another thing that brings um, people back to their core and allows for freedom, and again, like I said, less guilt and less of a burden, is having your medical advanced directives in place. So the one thing that people lack, they don't want to have those conversations. I hate to say it, but we're all going to have our last breath on this earth. And so I spend a lot of time making sure that those advanced directives are in place, because there is freedom there. You can breathe again. Again, it allows space for creativity to come back into your life, enjoyment in the life of not only you, but your loved ones, because usually the adult children or the close family members are feeling that. And so I kind of do that a little different than, like, say, an attorney. I educate, and my prices are not as high. But I believe that a lot of times people will sign off on advanced directives and they don't really understand what's involved in those life support measures. What are the pros and cons? And what exactly is involved? And not only that, I also hold family meetings because I don't want an advanced directive to be sitting in a dusty drawer somewhere. And so we go back and we talk with the family so that way everyone's on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? The healthcare proxy, they need to understand that they're the healthcare proxy and they can perform your wishes and honor them. It's not always the next of kin. It's not always the spouse. And so, like I said, this really cuts back on misunderstandings or disagreements later in life.
Sure.
And one more thing I have to say about advanced directives. The sooner you get that in place, I believe that as soon as you turn 18, you're an adult, you should really start planning. COVID taught us that, right? We lost a lot of people that had no idea it was their time. And so what I also do is I meet with people annually to see if their wishes have changed.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want at 20, 40, 60, 80, it's going to be different. What you want at 79 and a half with a grandchild on the way that you just want to see and hold one time is going to be different. I've seen people hold on for grandbabies. So those, like, the more I get to know you, the more we could say, you know what, maybe it's worth it that last month because that baby's on the way. And that means so much to that person. Right. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I know that, there's things in our lives that we should do. And we spend so much time and effort worrying about those. And sometimes we get them done, sometimes we don't. And having that advanced directive in place, to me, is just like, I know people don't like to talk about it. And that's why I wanted to have this summit, was so we could talk about these things. And, just, it's going to happen. You can't avoid it. And what a relief it is to unburden yourself of that task. But so tell us, what's in an advanced directive?
So if you become incapacitated, that means you can no longer make the decisions for yourself. You decide what your medical wishes are. Mm-hmm. And so I tell people, if you don't hire me, if you don't hire end-of-life doula, you can go on your state website and you can fill that out yourself. Okay. You just won't have the knowledge. It'll be a template, which is better than having nothing. And then you also get to choose, well, if I can't make the decision, who's going to be the one advocating for me? Now, as an end-of-life doula, once I understand your wishes, I will advocate along with the person. I always bring the person back to, this is what the person said. But one thing I do additionally is I create what's called a living well plan. Uh-huh. And that documents the emotional, mental, spiritual wishes for the last hours, days, and weeks of life. I guide people through the process of deciding what they want to see happen. Who needs to be there? How do you want that sacred environment to look, smell, feel? And what do you want to see happen after you take your last breath? Does somebody need to be notified? I even do dress rehearsals.
Wow.
It limits the amount of stress and fear around those last moments. And guess what? It will end up happening most times. When those last moments are happening, there'll be a little humor because they'll remember what the person said or did. I mean, it's like really amazing work. Now, everybody may not want to do that, but that is something that I will do because, again, you don't get to experience death more than once.
Right.
Unless for some supernatural reasons or whatever. But you only get to experience it once. You only get to see your mom or dad or your loved one pass once. And so we just got to talk, prepare. Educate. I just can't say that enough.
Yeah. Well, now it's a more common event to have a birth plan. This is exactly how I want my birth to go. And then we talk about after I die, this is what you should do with my body. Sometimes we get to that point, sometimes we don't. But to actually have that plan of what I want that to look like to the best of my ability, and we don't know, if we're going to be in a car accident or if we're going to die of a disease or whatever. But nevertheless, we can make those put that into play.
Yeah. And it's funny that because with my first daughter, when you had to get everything perfect, I actually had a birth doula now.
Uh-huh.
And so it's really like a 360 moment for me. So that's amazing that you shared that about the birth doula. I did have one and I did plan. And what the other thing people don't realize is that once a person takes their last breath, they don't have to be whisked away. There are still spiritual things that happen after the last breath. There's still movement in the body. There are things that happen that medicine and science cannot explain. And so I educate people. If they have their own spiritual ritual or they have their own religious ritual, they'll tell me. If not, I'll educate them. Maybe we'll read some poems. Maybe we'll just spend time quietly. Like there's so many things you can do. I once asked a client, now, I didn't get a chance to get to know this person, but I said to the daughter, I said, would your mother want the neighbors to see her taken out of here? She said, you know what? She wouldn't want such and such watching her, carried out. I said, well, guess what? Let's call in the middle of the night. Now, the death certificate won't say it won't say when she actually passed. And if that's important for you, call right away. But if it's not important, there's so many things you can clean a body. The family can clean a body. There's so many things that can happen. And there's a lot of research that supports that helps with grief. Just
Right.
not having that body whisked away.
Yeah. So there is that end of life care. And I think that we think about it as such a medical process. But really talk a little bit more about that care at the end of life, physical, emotional, and spiritual. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's just like what I said. It's about allowing a space for people to be their true selves without that judgment, without that expectation, no attachment to the outcomes, educate them on the rights of things that they're aware of or not aware of. Creating those rituals, listening and honoring and respecting too. This is really critical. Respecting that a lot of times we say a person is dying. And sometimes we for lack of a better terms, but what I like to say is that they're still living until that last breath. And so really respecting that. I incorporate essential oils into my practice. Like maybe the family's having a hard time. We'll use a little lemon oil for mood booster. Maybe we need to pull an all-nighter and need a little boost for that to stay up all night. I'll use the peppermint. Maybe I will use lavender on a person who is, has a terminal diagnosis, who's sooner rather than later taking their last breath. I also am trained as a Reiki practitioner, and that is, have you ever heard of Reiki?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And energy work.
So for those who don't know, it's a healing technique to restore the physical, emotional well-being. And so sometimes it's for the person who is closer to taking their last breath, and sometimes it's for the family. Sometimes I conduct body scans, and sometimes I will be able to pick up on that there's some undealt with trauma, some unforgiveness. And my job is to relieve the person who's taking their last breath of what's going on, and maybe some things that they haven't dealt with, to lighten their load so that way they will transition lighter. And I don't want to use the word easier because I think that's not a good word, but just to have a lighter load as they transition, because people will hold on when their loads are heavy.
Say more about that.
So if I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I don't have a dog because I have 2 children and I can't take care of one more person. But people will they love their dogs, and they will hold on because they're worried about their dog, or they're worried about their spouse. If you say to a person who is passing, I'm going to take care of the dog, and you don't have a plan, you have to say, I have a plan with integrity, and all of a sudden I'll see somebody take their last breath. Yeah. Or maybe some unforgiveness. I once dealt with a gentleman, and he had 2 children that nobody knew about. That was a tough load he carried. Now, it was so late we couldn't sort of deal with that, but he and I could deal with it. We couldn't deal with it as a family, but he and I could deal with it.
Right.
And so there's just no one way to die. And again, like I said, medicine and science can't explain everything that happens around that end of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. And we do, as we have done with birth, we do tend to make it a medical event. And it really is, I think, much more a spiritual event than a medical event. And we do have to, just like we have to, fill out or do those advanced directives, there are things that we need to clear before we can die. And so, and like you said, you can't always do that with your family. Sometimes that would put a bigger burden on them to realize at the end of life that you have something that you hadn't told anybody or something, but to have somebody like you there present who can listen and let them just clear that.
Yeah,
And
you clear the space. And so sometimes it's also, if I'm in a residential place and there are caregivers involved, or even if I'm in a home and there are caregivers involved, they have gotten to know that person. So I also sometimes have to work with them to give them permission to release the person, because they've known them, they're holding on tight, they're still trying to feed them, because they want them to be there.
That's their job.
Yeah, exactly. Same with the doctor, but we're still working on that. But so for me, I just would like, my prayer, my wish is that, people just show up authentic in the moment. I'll tell you what my winning formula is. My winning formula is that I take really good care of myself. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean buying designer bags, but it means, doing the thing, getting at my core and doing the things that I enjoy. Opening my heart space, tapping into my intuition and my higher power, and then serving. And that's how I help my clients. And so sometimes I may come into a family and there's that one that they consider with the loud mouth. If you give that person that they consider with the loud mouth, or the one that they think is disruptive, they just want to be heard. And that's the way they learn to communicate. So if you give them the coping skills and you listen and you see them, and you allow them to show themselves, all of a sudden things calm down, and all of a sudden people are coming together. It's miracles I can't explain other than the power of that moment.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, okay. So tell us, what is it like to work with you, or how does somebody, what does it mean to be a death doula? How does somebody find, what is it like to have a death doula?
Yeah. So again, it's just that safe place to ask those questions. provide physical comfort, to be aware of what's going on. So I always tell people, get hospice in here because they'll handle the medical work really well. I'll be the eyes and ears for hospice. How many times has a doctor told you what needs to happen? You walk out and you say, what did they say? Especially at such a time as this. And so I just go back, well, let's reinforce what the hospice nurse or team said. I may even say, they don't want to call the hospice nurse. It's a 24-hour number. They don't want to call. And I say, you're not a burden. That's what they're getting paid for. But, so sometimes the family, especially when a person goes in the active dying phase, they could be in that for days. And so I'll tell family members, it's what we call respite care. Go get a good night's sleep. I will sit and watch. Just sitting, answering the needs that arise during that active dying phase to ensure a peaceful transition. That's vigil sitting. I do not, under no circumstance, do I want people to see the disease and not the person. Right. So we conduct life reviews. It's just a way to validate a person's purpose in life. We examine and document all their decisions, roles, contributions, impacts that they play on their family, community, the world. And then sometimes people want to leave behind remembrances, artifacts. Maybe you want to, for that baby that was just born, maybe you want to send a note or card every year their birthday. I'll help facilitate and do that work. And nowadays, we are so cool right now, right? Society is in this death positive movement. People want to write their own eulogies and their programs. And so if they're open to that, I say do it, There's so much creativity that people are looking at ways to celebrate life and not to mourn it. I just help facilitate that. There was a thought I wanted to say. Because you know what happens? You've dealt with a long illness. So I tell people, the more work you can get done now, if you're open to that, let's do it. Because after a long illness, it's hard to go gather all the pictures, get that program together. We can do it now. And when the person takes a last breath, and I love our funeral homes, they have to do their job. When they tell you you have to be there at 8:00 in the morning, I tell them you do not. You can take a break. You just had a long haul here. Take a break. Go the next day. Go at noon. Go 2 days later. Send me if you have to go do the talking. Right. But it really is amazing work. And every case is different. I can tell you so many different cases. I remember once I was sitting vigil while the family was sleeping, and the woman was maybe 12 hours away, maybe 15 hours away from her last breath. And the energy in the room was that of dancing. So as they're sleeping, I'm in the room. Like, I played music before, but I have never danced. But that is what she needed. I don't know why. I can't explain it all. I've been in the bed next to someone. I'm the cuddle type. I want to be cuddled. You don't have to talk to me, but I do want to be cuddled. And there are people that want to be cuddled. There are people who don't. So one particular case, I was in the bed on one side, their daughter was on the other side, and she transitioned beautifully. So it's the most amazing work. I'm blessed to have answered that question. Are you willing to risk it all to gain yourself? And I had no idea what that was, but I sure am glad I said yes one day.
Yeah. Well, so, that's like my, one of the questions I like to ask is what tips do you have for people to living a full life? And I think that's it. Are you willing to risk it all to really find yourself?
And let me just say too, like, a lot of doulas are working virtual now. So I am available virtually. Okay. But if you go to the National Education Doula Alliance.org, they have a list of directories. So if you want someone to come and sit alongside of you, there's a directory listed by states. And so that's the way to get a doula in your life. Okay.
And you even said you start working with families like early on, like long before they're going to die, and then just continue with them.
So that is my hope. And so I know that our seniors are suffering. I do companionship. And so what does that look like? Getting back to the core who they are. People, I say they're getting closer. you know, we can go and have, now I won't drink the wine, but we'll go and have wine and cheese someplace. I've gone to 4 or 5-star dining places just with the proper support. So one of the things I ask, instead of saying like, what are your last wishes? I say, well, who are you? Who are you now? Who would you like to be with the proper support? And I provide that support. And so it can be one woman, she always had the theme of gardening in her life. And this particular woman had advanced stage dementia. And I'm like, well, let me find a community garden. And we garden, and now she didn't get down in the dirt. If I had known that, maybe I wouldn't have found it. But she would encourage me, keep going. Look how great we're doing. And then one day I said, you know what? Let's walk around to the other gardens. And this woman with advanced stage dementia was able to tell me what the other plants and flowers were in other people's garden. Now, if I didn't see her as a person and I saw that disease, we wouldn't have been there.
You wouldn't have done that. And she wouldn't have been able to share that and feel that. I think that's, that's the feeling, the essence of who you are, and being able to remember that is so, like, what a gift.
It really is a gift.
Yeah. Wow.
For them and for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. All right. What was, if you'll tell me again the name of the website.
Yeah. So my company is You Are Not Alone Elder Care.
Okay.
And my website, I use the acronyms YANAEC. So it's You Are Not Alone Elder Care, YANAEC.com. And I am on every single social media.
Okay.
I don't consider myself a creative person, but I'm on all types of social medias, and my handles are YANAEC LLC.
Okay.
So Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you name it.
Right. Well, I will make sure that I definitely include all of those links and the link to your website in the emails that we send out. And also, you said that you wanted to offer people a free gift, a consultation.
Yeah. So I would absolutely, the living your life to the fullest, I will absolutely offer a free 30-minute consultation on how to begin the process of putting your affairs in order, meeting you where you are, determining what your needs are, just getting you back to the core you are and living your best life.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
That is so, so valuable. And just opening the conversation.
Absolutely.
Is about dying is incredible. Awesome. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to talk about today?
Did I talk too much? No, I don't have anything else. I think I'm good. I'm so passionate. I tell people, don't ask about my job, because I will go on and on and on. I was actually on good behavior today. It really has been a pleasure. And again, I appreciate the work you're doing. If there's ever any time that I can help you in all your initiative and great service that you're providing, just give me a call.
I will. Well, I would like to take advantage of your free offer for sure, and realize, I need a doula. I'm not, it doesn't matter how old I am, and my mom, and I want to pursue that, and I think it's really important, and just to add, to lessen the burden and lessen the chaos around dying, and really have that opportunity to make it your own, because this is your life. Your death is yours too.
And we only do it once.
We only do it once. Yeah.
And when you go to my website guy, he did this. When you go there, it'll first pop up plan time with Adrian or something like that. So that'll be the first link. So you can always get me on there and schedule that free assessment, or email me, however it works. But once you go into that website, that calendar will pop up. So
great. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on with me today. But more than that, I want to thank you with blessings and grace for the work that you do. You are so valuable. And I am so glad that you found your purpose.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.